Hi everyone, my name is Ahand, and today I'm going to be walking you through a project file that is inspired by the style of Armen Miran. So without further ado, let's get straight into the project file. We're going to start off by establishing the core rhythm of the track, which sounds like this. It's a really simple rhythm consisting of a kick, a hi-hat, and a clap. For the kick, I chose a really soft and subtle kick from my Organic House Daydreamer sample pack called Natural, which sounds like this on its own. I then added a hi-hat from the pack as well, on every 8th note. And then I added some claps on every 2nd, 4th beat. For the clap, I have two different layers. One being a transient clap, which is a really short stab hit. And the other one being an organic clap, a hand clap, which is more stereo. And you can notice that this clap is called pre-shift clap because it is pre-shifted by 4 milliseconds to get that sweep effect. After establishing the core rhythm, we're going to move on by adding more rhythmic elements to this basic drum groove. And for that, I like to start off with some shakers. Some tight shakers as well, which you can find from the Daydreamer Organic House sample pack. Some loose shakers, which sound like this on their own. And a tom groove. All of these rhythmic elements go very well with the core drums that we've previously created. Without the rhythmic drum elements, everything would sound a bit more stale. What I like to do from here is add in some percussions that fill in the tiny spaces between the drum groove. With the percussion, it sounds like this. You see how much of a difference it creates and how much more character it adds to the drum groove if you add in some subtle little percussion sounds right in between where empty spaces are. For the percussion sounds, I added drum rack, and I dragged in some short one-shot sounds from my Organic House sample pack, just like this. I placed them into the individual fields of the drum rack, and I played my drums together. And from then on, I started drawing in the individual notes of the one-shots. When it comes to creating these percussions, especially these little small detailed percussions, it's important that you take your time with these because they make so much of the unique character of the drums that you have in your track. So play around with the individual notes, play around with the stereo placement, mono, left, right, or play around with the pitch. Just make sure that you take your time for these percussion sounds because they make up a lot of the track's character. So this is what we have in total. After we've established our drum groove with the percussions, I like to mess around with the tempo to get the vibe right. but I went with 117 BPM because I find that to be the sweet spot for this genre. From then on, I added some organic textures that sound like this. What I like about adding such organic textures is that they fill the high frequency spectrum of your track and reduce that feeling of it being empty. And then I add some pads, like a melodic element that plays in the background the whole time. Yeah, that's awesome. So we've added our chord drums, some rhythmic textures, percussions, and added some ambient sounds on top to establish the core vibe of the track. What I like to do from here on is add a bass sound, which sounds like this. After listening to a lot of tracks by Armen Miran, I found out that he doesn't really use a lot of long and static bass lines. He mostly uses bass lines that are really short and percussive. You can find a lot of these bass lines in the sample pack as well. To show you how simple it is to recreate these bass lines, I'm going to recreate this bass line using Serum. So I'm going to create a MIDI track over here, create a MIDI clip, look for Serum, and then I'm going to apply cutoff filter like this, pitch this saw wave down a few octaves. Then I'm going to draw in some notes. We're in the scale of C minor, so I'm going to use C as my root note for the bass line. There we go. Just going to duplicate it from here on. Duplicate it again. So this is the sound we have now. I'm going to reduce the length of each individual note. Now I'm going to apply an envelope to the cutoff, just like this. Reduce the sustain. And that's basically it for the bass line. Just keep in mind that it needs to be kind of short and percussive. After I have the drums and the bass line ready, I like to add my first melodic element to the track, which sounds like this. I used Ableton's Analog to recreate this pluck sound. Since I composed this track in C minor, every melody, every chord has to be structured around C minor. If you want your melodies or your melodic fills to sound like Armen Miran, it's important that you use notes that are in the Phrygian scale. So for this, I'd like to turn on the scale option in Ableton Live 11 here. Since our track is in C minor, I chose C. And you have these options to choose which scale you want to use. We could either use the minor scale, which works as well, or the Phrygian scale to have notes that are more Oriental sounding. So we have a track going right now that sounds pretty much like Armen Miran, but to give it that unique characteristic, what I like to do is add in Oriental voice sounds or more Oriental type of sounds because they really give that final touch to his sound. So for this track, I used Contact. And for Contact, there is this library called Ethno World 6 Voices. And I chose this Iranian style sound, which sounds like this. I mean, this element alone gives the track so much character. It's really important to include sounds like this if you want to achieve the style of Armen Miran. What you can also do is choose other samples that sound Oriental. For example, this Mideast violin that comes from my Daydreamer sample pack, which I'm going to put right here as a fill. I'm going to change the pitch so it matches the track. Like this. Change the warp mode. Perhaps add some delay. Let's see how it sounds. Cool. Depending on the style that you want to achieve with the track, if you want it to be a bit more dark, you can leave out chords. But if you want it to be a bit more melodic and have a more emotional feel, then adding chords might be a great idea. And since this track was composed in C minor, you're going to have to choose chords that are in C minor. I included a couple of these chords in the Daydreamer pack. So the first chord is a C minor chord, which sounds like this. The second one is a G minor chord. And the third one is a G sharp minor chord. And if you don't know which chords you need to use, what you can do is turn on the scale option, hit minor, and then you can see which chords are in the C minor scale. Alternatively, you can search the internet for the C minor scale. So type in C minor scale, or whatever scale your track is in, and then you can see which notes are in the C minor scale. So my first chord is a C minor chord, C, which is the root note. Then I created a G minor chord, which is the perfect fifth, the fifth note of the scale. And then I created a flat minor chord, which essentially is the sixth note of the scale. And I created a chord from there. Together it would sound like this. And with the track, it sounds like this. I've additionally added another synthesizer sound that goes well with these chords. And for the final steps, I added some quick mastering by cutting out some low end, taking out some peaks, which usually come from the clap, some OTT compression, but like a really small amount, some soft saturation, limiting to increase the volume of the track. And that's basically it. So that's it for this track. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough. I'm going to add this project file entirely for free to use in the description below. You can check the project file out, see how it was structured, and go in depth into the individual sounds to learn how to create this type of style. And if you'd like to use more samples in the style of Armen Miran or organic house, then you can also check out my Daydreamer sound pack, which is also included in the description below. So enjoy producing, make the best out of your music, and stay blessed. Peace out.